The stars in her eyes turned into babies. Everything that she once said for certain all turned into maybe. She thought time could no longer ignore us. She said it's time for her to do the things that others did before us. Now she wanted someone. She wanted someone.
Irene, don't you want to play with us?
Please.
Come on.
Take your favorite game.
You can take your pictures later.
Come on, Irene. Come play.
Don't you want to play with us?
It's fine then. Bye.
I am distinctly original innately and in development. I have in me a quite unusual intensity of life. I can feel. I have a marvelous capacity for misery and for happiness. I am broad-minded. I am a genius. I am a philosopher of my own good peripatetic school. I care neither for right nor for wrong. My conscience is nil. My brain is a conglomeration of aggressive versatility. I have reached a truly wonderful state of miserable, morbid unhappiness. I know myself oh very well. I have attained an egotism that is rare indeed. I have gone into the deep shadows.
The stars in her eyes turned into babies. Everything that she once said for certain all turned into maybe. She thought time could no longer ignore us. She said it's time for her to do the things that others did before us. Now she wanted someone. She wanted someone. You shouldn't settle down till you get older. But she just got defensive, didn't hear a word we told her. The first time in love sure did confuse her. Too bad that it had to be with a controlling loser. She just wanted someone. I know this because she wanted one person, and she didn't care who it was. She no longer tried to socialize or mingle. She slowly slipped out of the scene. She was no longer single. Now she only saw herself as being double. And when she didn't see herself at all, we knew she was in trouble. She just wanted someone. She didn't care about crowds. She wanted one person to put her head in the clouds. She wanted The stars in her eyes turned into babies.
Morning, everyone. This is Butte. Welcome to Butte. We'll be making 2 stops here. The first will be our breakfast stop at the Joker's Wild Restaurant. I have a 30-minute break there. We'll depart at 9:30. Head over to the depot. The depot's just a couple of blocks away. Now, the depot is going to be your transfer point for southbound if you're going to Dillon, Pocatello, Idaho Falls, Salt Lake City. Points into Nevada, Arizona, California, New Mexico. Transfer point will be the depot, not here at the restaurant. First of all, we will have a 30-minute meal break here at the Joker's Wild Restaurant.
Who was my mother? I'm not sure if I know. I'm in her house, and these are all her things. Mostly things she's bought. I don't know that they tell me anything about her, though. But I found this box.
You know, in some respects, as humans or people, we're trying to figure out who the hell we are. I mean, we almost spend an entire lifetime in doing that.
I'm actually just getting curious and knowing my genealogy. My grandmother just died. Both my grandmothers died about 4 years ago, and I wish I had talked to them more about it, because now they're gone, and so much of that history is gone.
My parents are both born on the reservation, and so even our great-grandparents and my grandparents, they're actually mapped on the reservation. If you go, we have allotments, and each of their names are on that map. So my genealogy is literally mapped.
And last year I went back there to see where my dad was from, and it's a little hilltop town, and everybody looked at me like I was a stranger, but very familiar stranger.
And I know one great story that my great-grandmother came on a boat with, I don't know how many kids she had, I think 6 kids, and everything was stolen from her, and she got here with a fork, and we still have the fork.
I see my life now, but none of it too clearly, so it seems.
I wish I knew more, and I have a feeling that when my parents are gone, I'll regret that I don't know more, that I'll lose that part of my history. But I haven't gotten motivated enough to take action on it now.
There's a part of me that has simply closed it off, and just because I was told not to be curious, I guess.
It's my great-great-grandmother who was allergic to mustard seed. And then she married a man from Chicago who was allergic to canola.
I didn't really know anything until last year, 2 years ago. And then I thought, well, since I'm adopted, I would, ask my mom if it was okay with her, my adoptive mother, if it was okay with her to research it. So she looked into it a little for me, and I found out what my original name was, and my mother's name, basically. So I now have I suddenly, after all this time, have this ethnic background.
I believe that
personality traits and habits are passed on through families.
How much do we look at our past to embellish certain things about it? I mean, I know people that are a quarter Scottish who decorate their entire home in tartan plaids and define their own character off of that. The reality is that we're all just a complete mishmash, but for some reason we need this focal point to define who we are.
Such a small room, portraits of yourself on the wall. You shot the shotgun, gets so hard to come back from a fall.
Butte, Montana, city in a valley inside the Rockies, gifted by volcanoes thousands of years ago. 3 kings came from the east. 3 copper kings followed the twinkle of the rock of Butte. But these copper kings did not bring gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. No, these kings from the east came with barely the shirts on their backs and took away gifts of gold, silver, and more copper than the world has ever known. First came the raggedy prospectors, miners who worked with dinner plates. They squatted on the banks of Silverbow Creek and sloshed water and silt in their dinner plates. They sloshed and sloshed until the brown dirt had all sloshed off and left behind small twinkles of gold. Just dust, but dust with the power to take a man from his family, his home, his everything, and dump him in an empty valley with nothing but a dinner plate and greed. One of the men who came at this time, one of the would-be kings from the east, was W.A. Clark. He of the pots and pans and shovels and overalls. First a miner wandering through Utah, hiking through Colorado, looking for his fortune in rock. He found it instead in a general store. He bought things cheap and sold them dear, and made enough money from that to plant the seed that would make him one of the richest men the world had ever known. He came to Butte with the things men needed: flour and hardware, shovels and whiskey. The miners had no other source for all these things, so they paid W.A. Clark. They emptied out their shining bags of gold and silver, and he flicked them back the goods he had gotten for a pittance. With all that sparkly dust, he built himself a bank. He bought the claims from many a miner. He bought his opinion into the heads of Montana. He bought himself a seat in the U.S. Senate. The next king who came was Marcus Daly. Daly looked at the rock of Butte, and he saw past the silver and gold. He saw something pale, ruddy red. He saw copper. So he paid a visit to his friend George. George Hurst, that is. The man who owned the largest gold mine on earth. The man who owned the largest silver mine on earth. And Marcus Daly asked George Hurst if he wanted to go for 3. It was about this time that names like Edison and Westinghouse were showing the world that with a little copper wire, you could make the night as bright as day. You could make the silence sing. You could turn a switch and send the strength of a team of oxen through a little strand of copper. With money from Hearst and James Haggis and Lloyd Tevis, Daly turned his shovel a different direction and began to mine his Anaconda, the claim he bought from Michael Hickey, not for its silver, but for its copper. For under that Anaconda claim, the copper was waiting. Under the city, it hid its redness. It was the seed that needed to be scratched in order to send out its shoots to flower a cosmopolitan city built on rock, built on avarice and industry and conniving and knowledge, but mostly a city that flowered into 1,000 ruddy stories. Daly turned Anaconda from a claim to a mine to a company, to an awesome power, the Anaconda Company, the Amalgamated Mining Corporation, the Anaconda Copper Mining Company, ACM, the company. The name Anaconda Copper was already an equal to Standard Oil, Edison Power, Bell Telephone when the third king came to Butte. This king was the Playboy King, the charming prince, F. Augustus Heinze, who came to break up the party, who came to play a little poker, with hands of minds and hands of men. This king challenged the company for the first few years of the century. He spoke with a voice, with sweet stories that bent the miners to his side. But his stories and judges and claims and his word were just a temporary thorn, a thorn that Heinze's own playboy lifestyle dulled. And this one, the last of the three kings, faded into what remained, the company. The richest hill on earth, a mile high, a mile deep, and a mile wide. Wide open town, the Gibraltar of unionism, perch of the devil. These are just the titles of the many sprawling books of Butte, a city with far more stories than residents, where the stories live grander lives than many of the people do. We have started you off with the stories of the kings, but there are many more stories, more colorful, simpler, complex, funny, sad, believable, and absolute hogwash in the buildings and faces and rocks and mines and streets and mountains and days and nights of Butte.
mile high, a mile deep, and some say a mile wide, is a popular expression about Butte. An elevation 5,760 feet high in the Rocky Mountains explains the mile high part. Among the thousands of miles of mine shafts and tunnels lying far below the surface of the richest hill on Earth, exists one mine that is a mile deep. But the mile wide part is one of the most fascinating features of all, the Berkeley Pit. The colorful history of the mining camp dates back to the Civil War and the discovery of gold in Silverboat Creek west of here. When the gold began to diminish, the early day prospectors turned their attention to silver. A lot of small fortunes were made by these old-timers, and just as many were lost over Butte's wide-open gambling tables. But another mineral, copper, soon became the king of the hill thanks to the dawning of the electrical age. Prior to the invention of the telegraph, telephone, and electric light, copper was used mainly in the manufacture of cooking utensils and jewelry. The demand was not there for the red metal. The Butte Hill was once dotted with 30 to 40 head frames of gallows frames, those tall lattice objects, some of which you can still see silhouetted against the sky. These were used to raise and lower men and materials as deep as 1 mile underground. Near the center of the hill stood the Anaconda mine, which was staked out by a Civil War veteran named Michael Hickey. 7 years later, Hickey sold his claim to an Irish immigrant, Marcus Daly. One listed 3 partners to operate the mine and establish what has become the Anaconda Minerals Company. The Anaconda Company consolidated the Butte district and
A mile deep, a mile high, a mile wide. A wide open town, the perch of the devil, a city of nicknames, full of residents with nicknames. Nickel Annie, Fighting Steve, Crazy Mary, Big Jerry, Dutch Nick, Stuttering Alex, Butt Block, Liz the Lady, Hail Mary. A city of stories that keep the city warm, that keep it alive despite the closing of the mines, despite the change in economy from rock and precious metal to service and strip malls. In 1977, the Anaconda Company was bought by Atlantic Richfield Corporation. A few years before that, Anaconda lost much of its assets when its copper mines in Chile were nationalized under President Salvador Allende. Atlantic Richfield took over Anaconda's assets in Butte and shut them down. It shut down the Berkeley Pit and turned off the pumps that kept it dry. It filled with water and is still filling, today the most polluted body of water on Earth. The body of watered-down sulfuric acid, reflecting the sky, that told a flock of hundreds of migrating snow geese to stop on their migration. A body of water that ate the snow geese from inside to out when they tried to swim there in the middle of their long flight. Today, electronic sounds are played in the pit during bird migration times to keep the flocks from landing there. Butte, Montana, home of the largest Superfund site in the United States. The entire stretch from the huge smelter in Anaconda to the Berkeley Pit, an area so stunted by the sulfur and arsenic released in smelting that it was only after operations were stopped in 1981 that trees, stunted, oddly shaped trees, began to grow back on the red land between the two cities. Butte, Montana, also home to one of the largest historic districts in the United States. All of uptown Butte stands as a Victorian city frozen in 1917. Examples of work by some of the greatest architects of that time, Cass Gilbert, Long, and Keyes, frozen by an economy that peaked in 1917 and dropped steadily every year after. A massive historic district that was almost sacrificed to the company, to copper, in the 1970s, when the mayor and the city council, acting under the suggestion of the Anaconda Company, voted to implement a study that described demolishing uptown so that the open pit mine could be extended over the entire hill. The study described a method for moving the business district to the flats below the richest hill on Earth. A week after voting to demolish Uptown, the city council reversed its decision, and Uptown still stands, bruised by arson and neglect, but still brilliant despite the gaps and cracks. And in the 1980s, the city banded together to fulfill the dream of a man who promised to build a Madonna if Mary saved the life of his dying wife. His wife lived, so he marshaled the collective energy of a community to build a 90-foot-tall statue, a metal Madonna, on the top of the mountain, above the city, above the pit, above the richest hill on earth. In Butte, many people say that the statue, the Our Lady of the Rockies, was a turning point for the city, battered by the depression that followed the closing of the mines.
Irene, you asked me if I'm thinking about you, and I want to know if you're thinking about me. You've got your headphones on. You've got a camera in front of your face. I don't even think I'm a part of your life. I don't even think if you know who you are or who I am, because you spend your entire life behind that camera lens. If you and I are going to be together, I need to have a real person. I need to have someone that I can talk to and that listens to me and listens to my stories. Are we really clicking? I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if I know you. I mean, I don't even know if you know you. Irene, your mother has died, and I haven't seen any mourning. I mean, it's like you're turned off. It's like you're living through some sort of, you're going through the motions. I mean, aren't you pissed? Aren't you sad? Aren't you angry? I mean, aren't you something? I mean, if you can't get upset about your own mother's dying, how can I expect you to have some emotion, some love for me? You've got that camera on all the time. You're looking through a lens. You're looking at the whole world through the lens. You're looking at me through a lens. You've got these headphones on. I mean, I don't even know if you're listening to me right now. I have no idea. I'm talking, but is anything there? Hello? Are you there? You know, why don't you just go on your trip, go to that dump, get the hell out of here? I mean, I don't really need this. I mean, just go do it. Go find whatever.
My sister-in-law's sister is really into genealogy, and prints out reams and reams of paper about family trees for the general public, basically, for anybody who's interested. So that's something my mom has done, has gotten family tree documents from this woman, Janice.
Well, my mother, like I said, she's the one who's spent a lot of time going to the libraries, to various museums. She's kind of a genealogical nut, I guess you might say. But she pretty much documented a long story for both sides of the family, you know, the mother's side and my father's side.
I'd gotten used to feeling a loss of balance. I disassociated.
The Butte Silverbow Public Archives, and we've been here for 14 years. We're in a turn-of-the-century fire hall. We have a great many genealogical resources, a great many scholarly resources.
I was persistently feeling like I was forgetting. I was persistently feeling there was someone I should be telling things to, contacting by phone, someone I was lonely for.
We have birth books, mortuary books, coroner's registers. We also have naturalization papers and newspapers for obituaries. We have police court books, applications for employment with the B&P Railroad or the Butte Silverbow government. So we have a lot of resources in one place.
I let out my breath. Then I see you. Proper ventilation.
Genealogy is like opening Pandora's box. You know, you ask one question and looking for one person and you find out all kinds of things about other people that get you off track and onto different tracks.
Then I see you. Oxygenation maintains totality. Verging onto habitual. Right up to the last possible moment you hold my gaze. When I breathe you
Mary
walk
Harrington.
away.
Mary Harrington. Mary Harrington. Mary Harrington. Mary Harrington. Mary Harrington. Mary Harrington. Harrington. Mary 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 Mary Harrington, Mary Harrington, Mary Harrington, Mary Harrington.
So did you find your house? Oh, it's gone. A lot of things are gone in Butte. A lot of things are still here. And even if something is gone, that doesn't mean that there isn't a trace of it. People in Butte collect a lot of things, especially stories. And the stories and the leftovers can probably tell you as much as that house could if it were still around. Do you think that when someone dies, all that's left is their name? I don't think so. People have been living in these houses and walking on these streets long before we had names. Sometimes I hear someone walking by my house or sitting on my porch, and I look out, there's no one there. Maybe I'm hearing somebody from long ago. We could be sitting on this bench right now with people who are dead. Who's to say that just because they're dead, they're not around anymore?
The World Museum of Mining preserves a rich culture of Butte, Montana, the richest hill on earth. While you'll find out about the mining, ethnic, and social history of the city and hell-roaring gulch, a reproduction of an 1890s mining camp. And you'll find thousands of items relating to Butte's history and culture right here in the museum, and exhibits both indoors and also outdoors. Butte, Montana, a city rich in mineral wealth and rich in a history of mining, began as a frontier settlement and it grew into a bustling mining camp, into a sophisticated city. Mining led Butte's economy most of the city's years. Now, you know, Butte was named after Big Butte, the core of an ancient volcano. And because of the ancient volcanic activity in this valley, rich ore deposits waited below the streets and buildings of the Butte Hill. Well, the mineral wealth lay below, and the city grew up above. You know, for the miners, going to work was no more than a short walk up or down the hill. Now those black towers you see dotting the landscape around and inside Butte, they're the head frames of the mines. The locals call them gallows frames because of the hazards of underground mining work. The gallows frames held the hoisting shaft. The hoist engine powered the cages and skips. Those are the elevators that were lowered and raised to take the miners down below the ground. The skips also carried the rock from which copper was to be smelted up from the earth. So the city of Butte grew on top of the mines, which stretched thousands of miles underground. The labyrinth, a network of shafts. But the miners worked with dynamite and picks. Now most mines operated 24 hours a day. Each shift would begin literally with a big bang. Blast shook the entire city. Crews below ground drilled holes into the hard rock of the mine shaft. Into the drill holes, they placed dynamite, then grabbed the next elevator up as the explosives detonated and loosened the rock. Then the next shift of miners came down to sift through the rubble, transferring it to ore cars that could be hauled by mule to the hoist or could be taken up to the surface for transportation to the smelter. Now in just 10 short years, between 1890 and 1900, Butte's population grew from 14,000 to 65,000. As Butte copper made into wire brought electrification to the darkest corners of our world. A wild mining camp, like the one you're walking through now at the museum, grew into the bustling city, largest between Minneapolis and Spokane, that you can observe and experience today that's a mile east in Uptown. And it's filled with people from all over the world. It is said that Irish miners had to merely flash a postcard of Butte's Never Sweat mine when entering Ellis Island to be loaded into a train that headed them straight to the mining city. Well, the Irish came to Butte in record numbers, so much so it was referred to jokingly as an official Irish county. But immigrants also came from hundreds of other places. Butte was a melting pot, a city buzzing with dozens of different languages, with first and second generation Americans outnumbering the more established New World citizens. Butte is a city of neighborhoods, each neighborhood with its own strong ethnic character. From Dublin Gulch to Corktown, from McQueen with its residents from England to Finntown to Meaderville, where the Italian red wine flowed freely at clubs, even during Prohibition. There were a great variety of neighborhoods for the Germans, for the Turks, for the Cornish, Scandinavians, for the Chinese. And the melting of all these traditions and peoples created a unique character in Butte, a character not to be seen in the rest of Montana or the rest of the world. Enjoy your stay in Butte, in the city of tradition and history. This wild mining camp struggled to tame itself into an important city.
Butte is unpredictable. Yesterday, today, and probably tomorrow, she is a city of paradox. Virtuous, yet wanton. vindictive and forgiving, hard-headed or charitable, kind, cruel, religious, agnostic, sordid, exalted, gay, and tragic. Magnificent when viewed by night from the continental divide, Butte has been likened to a diamond set in jet, but by day she is an uncorseted wench, dissipated from the night before. Perch of the devil she has been called by some, and merciful mother of the mountains by others. Butte boasts of suburbs called Nanny Goat Hill, Hungry Hill, Seldom Seen, Dog Town, Chicken Flats, and Society pages of the daily papers often feature side by side the likeness of a West Side Society matron and that of a promised bride whose address might be the kitchen of a Finnish boarding house on the wrong side of town. Was Mary Harrington the wife of a miner, an immigrant who did not want to leave the old country, who did not want to leave Ireland, but came across the ocean with her husband, but came to Butte with her husband, and watched him leave the house every morning and take with him a helmet and take with him a bucket with his lunch, and saw him come home in the evening, his bucket full of beer instead of the lunch, and all during the day or the night, whenever his shift was, sat and worked and worried over whether she would see him return that day, or whether that was the day she would never see him again. And when she slept beside him at night, with her family sleeping all around in the room where they all lived, did she still smell the mines on him, the smell of deep beneath the ground, the smell of death, the smell of certain people growing supremely wealthy and others risking their life to feed and clothe their families? An unpardonable slight would mark our effort to reflect true conditions if prominent attention were not drawn to the miners and smeltermen as a class, as upon them rests no light mantle of honor, for they are primarily the ones whose efforts really make Butte great. They are the men whose lives are jeopardized in the perilous duty of wresting riches from the bowels of the earth and refining
Matty Keeley's in his grave, but all of the big names, Heinze, Clark, and Daly included, none was more famous around the town than that of the irrepressible red-faced Matty with his homely Irish grin and his ready wit. If Matty had lived one more month, he would have spent 50 years in Butte. Marcus Daly himself gave Matty his first job, shoveling copper ore on the 100-foot level in his big Anaconda mine. And this Matty never forgot. To him, Marcus Daly was both a saint and a guardian angel. Long after Daly had died and had placed a statue of him on Main Street, Matty never passed the bronze memorial without reverently removing his hat and breathing a short prayer. In the later years, when the camp was undergoing great changes, political, social, and otherwise, Matty made semi-weekly visits to the statue and kept Marcus acquainted with every event. One of his worries that when erecting the statue, they placed it in such a position that Daly was facing the town with his back to the hill. "'Tis no luck will ever come of it," complained Matty. In life, Marcus Daly never turned his arse on the mines of Butte or the miners who dug them. Matty Keeley had worked in every mine, large or small, on the hill.
With giant
But he never
powder
tarried
and
long
deep
at any one
cavernous
mine.
shafts as his work fellows,
His irrepressible spirit
with not the best of ventilation, subjected to dampness common to deep levels, and in no few cases working in deep mire by reason of the presence of the water, perspiring like a stoker, with hollow unnatural noises as the only sounds to reach his ear, and shot to the surface or dropped to the bottom, thousands of feet below, day after day, with only a cable or a steel belt between him and certain death. Yet he goes cheerfully to his task, that he may meet the responsibilities of life like a man, educate his children to lives of usefulness, and provide for his family in a manner fitting and appropriate. He is a hero, every inch of him, and heroically performs a daily task from which a strong man might well quail and shrink back in terror. With the opening of more mines and the influx of more miners, several influential members of the community, never adverse to turning an honest penny, bought up at ridiculously low prices considerable land on the lower side of Galena Street. In an area only a few blocks from the heart of the town, they proceeded to erect a long line of one-room wooden shacks, which were promptly rented to women at exorbitant prices. On the south side of the street, close to 100 girls were crowded into tiny cell-like compartments or cribs. All nations and races were represented. On the door of each compartment was emblazoned the name, or nom de crib, of its occupant. Names such as Blondetta, French Irma, Austrian Annie, Dottie, Jew Jess, Mexican Maria, and scores of others as descriptive and colorful are remembered by those who were Butte's gay young bloods during those years. Was Mary Harrington a prostitute? Did she work in the shops on Galena Street? Did she spend her days and evenings with miners of all ages? Men still stinking of the bowels of the earth, men with little to lose, men whose primary source of love was just such an encounter, was just such an exchange. Did she have the independence that such a working woman had? Did she have the ability to shop for the things that she wanted most? Did she have the opportunity to try on fashions that only the wealthiest women in the East could wear? Could she strut down the street and feel that she had made it, that she was in control of her life? And did she ease her suffering, her diseases, with the cures from down the block in Butte's Chinatown? And did she ease her pain or ease her forgetfulness with the opium she smoked in such a room down the street? And did she live or did she die, happy or not, at such a life.
Wanted, a dependable employee. Must say please and thank you, and you're welcome, and come again soon. Must work as a team player. Must have a smile for all, and a kind word for the most obtuse. Must work hard until knuckles are white, and still have a smile and a "you are certainly correct." Wanted, a bendable, dependable, expendable, a people person without a soul. Wanted for a few good wages. Wanted to forget about your life outside. Wanted to drop all your serious needs while you serve our guests. Remember the customer. A rewarding work environment. Be part of the big national team. Wear the uniform proudly. Every customer will know you, but all you will know about the customer is that they are right. Employment opportunities. Make extra money. Dependable, bendable, expendable. Ask us about our employment needs. Please do not burden us with yours.
The city at present is most pronouncedly cosmopolitan, nothing of which another metropolis may boast in the way of up-to-dateness is here lacking. Its public institutions are models of their kind. 28 schools and annexes are distributed throughout the city and its suburbs. Her saloons have been named the Alley Cat, Bucket of Blood, the Water Hole, Frozen Inn, Big Stope, the Cesspool, Collar and Elbow, Open All Night, Graveyard, the Good Old Summertime, Pick and Shovel, the Beer Can, Saturday Night. Of such instincts, a growth in other elevating attributes logically follows. Cleanly home surroundings, a higher standard of home life, assimilation of better ideals, and the more prominent participation in the city's affairs all have their beneficial effect, lending a responsibility to the individual, which is leaving its imprint upon the mining class and to raising it to the plane of loftier citizenship. Perhaps Mary Harrington was a reformer, a busy woman who gave packages to the poor and then approached the saloons with an axe or her anger and slammed open the doors of the bars which sipped away so many of these men's above-ground hours, that drank away so much of their time with their wives and families, that clouded their minds from that dark sweating rock and from the mud that sucked their ankles down in the mud that they lived in by dark day. Perhaps she strode in a fierce fright on her face and threatened to break bottles, and did indeed break bottles, and lectured in empty halls and impatient saloons on the evils of brew, on the harsh effects it drew out of a man, on the end of the life, on the discomfort and pain that slipped out of the bottle and wafted into your head. Who was Mary Harrington? Who is my Mary Harrington? Who was the Mary Harrington that I want to find, that I need to? And why should it matter?
The rocks are not far from the surface. The rocks are not. The rocks pop out from underneath the surface. The rocks pop out. I'm thinking what to bring along, what to leave behind, what I've done before, what I still do now. I'm thinking what to bring along, what to leave behind, what I've done before, what I still do now.
It's what we walk on, what we stand on. It's what holds us up, what makes us possible. Despite that, we spit on it. We cut it and scar it and take out its guts. We rip out its insides and we tear out its heart. Wear its guts on our bodies, around our necks, around our fingers. We fill our houses with the intestines of our earth, our mother, our only home, and string bits of its flesh together to heat us, to run all our gizmos. We walk on it, we rely on it, and we foul its breath with our greed and condemn it with our contempt. We scar it and bruise it and expect it to take the pain, without shaking us, without boiling us or freezing us, without blowing us over. And then we complain and deny when those things do indeed happen. We do not borrow it, we do not use it, we eat it, we shit it out. We empty it of all future possibility to buy all our current comforts. And through all this, it keeps on spinning. It keeps on bringing us night and day, winter and summer, sun and moon. Despite all our hatred, despite all our uncaring, despite all our greed and ingratitude, it keeps us and holds us and welcomes us and feeds us. Despite our ingratitude, despite our rape, despite our contempt.
I'm thinking what to bring along, what to leave behind, what I've done before, what I still do now. I'm thinking what to bring along, what to leave behind, what I've done before, what I still do now.
me tell you about Frank Little. Frank Little came to Butte at a time when the Anaconda Company was becoming known as simply the company. The Little was popular, and his message to the miner was making waves. One morning, his body was found hanging under a railroad trestle. Nobody was ever brought to justice for the murder of Frank Little. A long procession led from uptown Butte to the cemetery on the flats to bury Frank Little. They say more than 10,000 people witnessed the funeral. They put him in the ground here. But they put your great-grandmother here, too.
One of the most colorful people I knew in Dublin Gulch was Hail Mary Harrington. Mary Harrington, known as Hail Mary. She owned a boarding house in the Gulch. There were 24 miners stayed with her. Some of them shared the same bunk. The guys working the night shift slept during the day. The day shifters, they slept on the same cot at night. Yeah, I remember Hail Mary. That's what everybody called her. Because my family used to go to her boarding house for her big meals. Big meals. The same meals she cooked for the miners. Yeah, we used to go there, Mom and Pop and I, and eat there, side by side with the miners, at a big table. That was quite a treat. The thing I remember most about Hail Mary's house was all the statues that she had. They were all little trinket things, and most of them of the Virgin Mary, which might have been how she got her name. They were all little statues of women, and she used to clean them gently with a cloth after she'd served the big meals that she cooked up.
Irene came to Butte to find something, to find a story. She felt like she had none. She had lost some of the people who gave her life a meaning, who gave her life a punchline or a happy ending, or resolution or catharsis. And she was left all to herself, without a direction, without a plot. All she had was a box, like a clue in a detective story. And so she went to Butte to solve the mystery, to discover a story. Butte was a place with a history, with a series of stories. This city's glory days may have passed, its population much lower, its power and position in the greater world, or even in the state of Montana, diminished. Yet those stories gave the city a certainty about what it was. They gave it a name and a reason, despite the many troubles and challenges that it faced and faces.
And she didn't care who it was.
Irene also found two people who lived in Butte, and though she was much more concerned about herself and her own search than she was about these people, she found that the more she tried to ignore them, the more they intrigued her. She also found the same thing about herself. The more she tried to ignore who she is or who she might be, the more those very things intrigued her, carried her. Irene discovered that her great-grandmother was Hail Mary Harrington. She was born Irish, but sailed across the ocean and landed in Butte, Montana. She had a collection of small statues of women, mostly the Virgin Mary. Mary had a daughter named Mary, who loved the statues and inherited them. Daughter Mary passed them on to her granddaughter Emily when she died. Hail Mary also had a daughter, Constance. Constance hated Butte and left as soon as she could. She said nothing about Butte to her daughter or her granddaughter. Her granddaughter, Irene, had to find these things out for herself. When Irene was young, she thought she knew everything. But that was only a sign of how little she did know. Today, she realizes that she knows very little, especially about herself. But she does know how magic that kind of ignorance can be.
The stars in her eyes turned into babies.